Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really complex and honestly quite personal question. It sits right where psychology, community, and belief all meet.
That's right. A listener asked us to explore this. Why is there such a deep, almost pervasive reluctance? You see it in leaders, you see it in individuals, to openly talk about doubt or difficult questions, even real intellectual challenges within faith communities?
It's a huge question, and one we really wanted to dig into.
Yeah, it's an essential deep dive, really.
Yes.
Because the research we looked at, the sources, they all point to the same thing. This silence isn't just happening. It's not an accident.
It's deliberate.
In many ways, yes. It's a complex social mechanism. One source actually called it a complex web of interconnected fears and social dynamics, and it seems designed for self-preservation.
Self-preservation for who? The person or the group?
Both, actually, for the individual and for the institution itself.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive, trying to unravel that web. We want to step back a bit from just the theology and look at the human psychology underneath it all.
Makes sense.
We'll start with the systemic fears, what leaders might be dealing with that kind of necessitates this silence. Then we'll flip it and look at the really personal, all gut-level barriers holding back the individual believer.
And
then we'll get into the really interesting part.
Yeah.
The totally different ways people view this silence. Is it protective? Is it damaging? Is it like intellectual imprisonment?
Right. We're basically trying to understand the mechanics of conformity, you could say, and self-protection. How do belief systems stay standing, even when they face tough evidence or, deep internal questions?
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's start at the top, the systemic fear. If you're looking at leadership in these communities, churches, temples, mosques, whatever, why do they feel the need to clamp down on open questioning so hard?
Well, often it seems to start from a place the sources describe as genuine pastoral concern, like leaders see themselves as shepherds, right? Protecting the flock. And they tend to view faith, especially for spiritual newborns or new converts, not as this rock-solid fortress, but more like a delicate plant.
Oh, okay. So the idea is if you throw really complex doubts at someone new, maybe historical problems, scientific challenges, it's like trying to feed a baby steak. They can't handle it yet.
That's exactly the analogy some use. The fear is that these hard questions, if they come too early, could actually stunt someone's spiritual growth. Or worse, push them off track completely, maybe into cynicism or even leaving the faith before they've built any kind of foundation.
So it's framed as protection.
Yeah.
Managing complexity for the newcomer.
Right. But that instinct to protect can quickly morph into something else, something you mentioned finding quite chilling.
Yeah, the house of cards anxiety. That really jumped out at me.
It's critical. This is like the deep down existential fear you find underpinning a lot of doctrines. The whole system can feel surprisingly fragile from the inside.
How so?
Well, if your entire belief structure rests on the absolute literal truth of one specific thing, maybe a 6-day creation or a particular claim about your group's authority, then questioning that one thing feels incredibly dangerous.
Because it might trigger a domino effect.
Exactly, a catastrophic cascade of doubt for that person. If that pillar falls, maybe the whole roof caves in.
So silence isn't just about protecting the person anymore, it's about protecting the structure itself. Maintaining structural integrity, not just faith.
Precisely. And sometimes it goes even further. Questioning isn't just seen as risky for the structure. In some communities, it gets completely pathologized. It stops being intellectual exploration.
What does it become then?
It gets framed explicitly as a spiritual vulnerability, maybe a temptation from some negative force or an opening for, harmful spiritual influences.
Wow. Okay, so the goalposts shift dramatically. It's not just academic or developmental protection, it's spiritual protections, high stakes.
Very high stakes. So, keeping quiet, avoiding those really probing questions, it becomes a form of spiritual defense work. It's about enforcing what gets called doctrinal purity.
Protecting against heresy.
Yeah, and heresy in that context isn't just having a wrong idea. It's seen as having a contagious bad idea, something that could infect and threaten the whole community body.
Which ties right into the last point on the systemic side. Preserving the community itself, the social aspect.
Absolutely. If everyone's constantly fighting about the very basics of what you believe, you stop being a unified support network pretty fast.
You lose that cohesion.
You do. And these communities, they're vital social groups for millions. They're built on shared beliefs, mutual support. Open, radical questioning can feel deeply divisive. It can undermine the very unity that's often the community's main function, providing comfort, help, identity.
So for leaders, keeping that unity safe often ends up trumping an individual's need to ask tough questions.
It often seems that way, yes. The group stability takes priority.
Those are really powerful reasons for the institution, the system, to encourage silence. Let's shift gears. For the actual person sitting there, maybe struggling with a doubt, the barriers feel much more immediate, more personal. What holds them back?
Oh, the sources are incredibly clear on this. The single biggest thing, more powerful even than feeling guilty, it's the fear of social ostracism, just being shut out.
Explain that more.
For so many people, their faith community, their church, synagogue, mosque, it isn't just a place they go once a week, it's their entire social world.
Right, so if you speak up about a doubt, you're not just risking losing an argument.
No, you're risking losing your friends, your kids' friends, your support system if you get sick or lose your job, sometimes even your closest family ties. It's everything.
That's an enormous cost, losing your whole social safety net.
It's terrifying for people, and right alongside that is the fear of being labeled.
Yeah.
If you do voice a serious question, you risk getting slapped with these really damaging labels.
Like what?
Or it's like troublemaker, apostate, faithless, or maybe people say you're being led astray. These aren't just words, they destroy your reputation, wreck relationships. They basically exile you, emotionally and socially, even if you're still physically there.
And if the group demands silence, and speaking out means potential exile, that fear creates this downward spiral, doesn't it? Psychologists call it the spiral of silence.
That's a perfect description of how it works here. The theory is if you think your view is in the minority, or in this case, dangerously out of step, you'll keep quiet because you fear isolation.
And the more people stay quiet,
the more it convinces everyone else that silence is the accepted view, the majority opinion. So the silence just feeds on itself, making it harder and harder for the next person to speak up.
that's the external pressure, the fear of the group.
Yeah.
But it's matched by this intense internal pressure too, right? The shame and the guilt.
Oh, definitely. The internalized shame is a huge psychological weight. Many religious frameworks explicitly teach that doubt isn't just a normal human thing when faced with complexity.
They teach it's a failure.
A failure of faith, yes. Or even worse, a moral flaw, a sign of spiritual weakness. So people learn to suppress their honest thoughts, not just to protect their social life, but because they genuinely feel guilty. They believe their questions make them bad, or broken, or spiritually deficient.
Which leads us to maybe the most powerful psychological dynamic, keeping people quiet. Cognitive dissonance. How does that work here?
Right. Cognitive dissonance, as you know, is that really uncomfortable mental stress you feel when you hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time.
Give us an example in this faith context.
Okay, imagine you deeply believe your holy book is historically and scientifically perfect, completely inerrant. But then you encounter really clear evidence, maybe from archaeology, maybe biology, that directly contradicts a literal reading of that text.
That creates this awful tension inside. You have to reconcile your core belief, maybe your whole identity, with what the evidence seems to show.
The tension is immense. It can feel paralyzing. And the research suggests that psychologically it's often much easier, less painful, less disruptive to your sense of self to just push down the challenging information.
Stay silent about the conflict.
Exactly, and often to double down even harder on the original faith position, because actually dismantling that core belief system, for many that feels like a complete identity collapse. So silence about the dissonance becomes the path of least resistance. It's self-protection for your own story about who you are.
Okay, so you've got fear of exile, labeling, guilt, this intense cognitive dissonance. What happens if someone does manage to push past all that and actually tries to ask for real answers from within their community?
Well, this is where it gets really sad for many. People who eventually go through what they call faith deconstruction, they often report the same pattern. When they finally took the risk, finally spoke up.
They didn't get deep engagement.
Often, no. They were met with dismissive platitudes. Just pray about it harder, read your scriptures more. You just need more faith.
Simple answers for incredibly complex, maybe even soul-wrenching questions.
Precisely, or sometimes worse, they were met with defensive anger. People felt threatened just by the question itself.
Because maybe they had the same questions, but were suppressing them.
Could be, but the result is the same. This consistent lack of a truly safe space, the absence of a shared language to even have these conversations, honestly, it quickly teaches people. It teaches them that silence is the only safe, viable option if you have doubts.
This brings us to a really fascinating turn in our deep dive. The contrasting views on whether this silence is actually a good thing or a bad thing. Not everyone sees it as a problem.
Absolutely not. There are strong arguments made in favor of caution and restraint. Let's call them the pro-caution believers.
Okay, what's their perspective?
They often frame their position as one of deep humility. They argue that constantly questioning everything isn't faithful searching. It's actually intellectual pride.
The idea that some mysteries are just too big for us, beyond human understanding.
Exactly that. Some mysteries are not for us to dissect, is a phrase you sometimes hear. They might consciously choose a simpler, trusting, more emotionally focused faith over getting bogged down in complex, potentially confusing intellectual debates. For them, faith is about peace and relationship, not necessarily winning arguments.
And they don't just see this silence as being for themselves, right? They frame it as a responsibility to others.
Yes, that's a key moral argument for them. They'll often cite religious principles about not causing a weaker brother or sister to stumble. Meaning their perceived responsibility to protect someone else's simple, perhaps fragile, but saving faith outweighs their own personal need to voice every single doubt or question they might have.
So in that view, silence isn't driven by fear. It's framed as profound, even self-sacrificial care for the vulnerable members of the community.
That's the argument, yeah.
Okay. But then you have a completely different group within these traditions, the pro-dialogue believers. You call them the wrestlers. They look at that same idea of humility and come to the exact opposite conclusion.
They really do. The wrestlers argue that a faith that hasn't been questioned, that hasn't been tested and wrestled with, is ultimately fragile. It's maybe not even authentic.
They think God can handle the questions.
They'd say, absolutely. If God is real, God isn't intimidated by human curiosity or doubt. They often point to figures in their own sacred texts like doubting Thomas and Christianity, who seem to be honored for their struggle, not condemned for their skepticism.
So for the wrestlers, doubt isn't the enemy. It's actually essential. It's how you make inherited belief your own personal truth.
It's the forge, yes. It's how faith becomes real and robust. And crucially, they see the enforcement of silence as the real danger.
How so?
Many people who end up leaving faith communities report that it wasn't the theological problems themselves that drove them out. It was the silence. It was the feeling of betrayal when they discovered that difficult parts of history or science had been deliberately hidden or whitewashed by leaders.
So the silence, which was meant to protect the institution,
paradoxically, ended up destroying trust and causing the very exodus it was trying to prevent. The perceived dishonesty was more damaging than the doubt itself.
Wow. Okay, so we have these internal debates. What about the view from the outside? What do non-believers, secular critics, say about this widespread reluctance to engage with doubt?
Well, their critique tends to be pretty sharp, often focusing on intellectual integrity. They generally see the silence as a sign of deep structural weakness, a lack of confidence.
Their argument being, if the faith is truly strong and based on reality, it should welcome scrutiny, right?
Exactly. They'd say it should easily withstand the toughest questions. So the reluctance to engage suggests to them a fundamental fear that maybe the whole system might not hold up under honest, critical examination.
And this is where you hear harsher terms like intellectual dishonesty.
Precisely. Critics often view the enforcement of silence as creating a kind of intellectual imprisonment. They argue the system prioritizes conformity, keeping the organization going over the honest search for truth. It effectively asks people to suppress their rational adult minds.
And just accept things with a kind of blind faith.
Or at least pretend to. Critics see millions potentially trapped, maybe wearing a mask of belief just to fit in and avoid those social costs we talked about.
And the sources also mentioned a more political critique about using fear as a tool for control.
Yes, some critics definitely go there. They point to certain fear-based doctrines, things like eternal punishment or concepts of original sin as mechanisms.
Mechanisms for what?
For creating a sense of inherent brokenness or inadequacy in people, a problem that, conveniently, only the religious institution has the cure for. By making doubt itself seem like a sin or a dangerous failure, the institution maintains its authority and shields itself from legitimate, fact-based challenges.
It sounds like this all really boils down to a fundamental clash over how we even know it's true, what the sources call the epistemological conflict.
That's probably the deepest layer of tension here. Epistemology is just the fancy word for how we know things, how we determine truth.
And the conflict is?
It's the clash between two fundamentally different approaches. On one hand, you have seeking truth primarily through revelation and authority. This often starts with a fixed conclusion, the doctrine, and then interprets evidence to fit it. Versus seeking truth primarily through evidence and inquiry. This approach starts with a genuine question and tries to follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if the conclusion is uncomfortable or challenges existing beliefs.
And the silence we've been talking about is what happens when those two ways of knowing collide within a community.
It seems to be an almost inevitable consequence, yes. When a system prioritizes authority-based knowing, evidence-based inquiry becomes a threat that needs to be managed, often through silence.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Because all of this, the fears, the barriers, the debates, seems to stem from two radically different visions of what faith is fundamentally.
Exactly. This really synthesizes everything we've discussed. It captures that core tension between wanting to protect something established and allowing something new, maybe more personal, to emerge. The source material gave us two really helpful metaphors for this.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first vision is faith as a fortress.
Right. Describe that.
In this view, faith is like a walled citadel. Its walls are built from specific, unchanging doctrines. The leaders are the guards on those walls. And the fortress's strength is measured by how well it keeps threats out threats, like modern ideas, scientific challenges, and especially doubt.
So in the fortress model, silence isn't a flaw, it's a defensive necessity, like reinforcing the walls.
Precisely. It's part of the defense strategy to maintain the integrity of the structure against external attack.
Okay, that's one vision. What's the complete opposite?
The opposite metaphor is faith as a journey.
A journey. How does that look?
Here, faith isn't a fixed location you defend. It's an ongoing path through a complex, ever-changing landscape. This path necessarily involves exploration, maybe taking some wrong turns, learning as you go, constantly checking and questioning the map you're using.
And in the journey model, what role does doubt play? It's not the enemy trying to breach the walls.
Not at all. In the journey framework, doubt isn't the enemy, it's more like the compass. It's the tool you use to check your bearings to make corrections. It's what ensures the journey is actually yours, that it's authentic, and that it leads towards a deeper, more personal understanding of truth, even if that truth ends up looking messy or different from where you started.
So the reluctance, the silence we kicked off with, it exists because you've got this fundamental conflict playing out between people and institutions trying to protect the unchanging fortress and others who feel compelled to embrace the dynamic, maybe riskier journey.
That really seems to be the core synthesis, yes. It explains why the issue is so charged and why there's no easy answer. For you, the listener, maybe trying to navigate this territory yourself. What this analysis suggests is that breaking that cycle of silence, if that's the goal, requires a real shift in perspective.
From fortress to journey, perhaps?
Or at least creating spaces within the fortress, maybe, where the journey is allowed. It means intentionally creating environments safe, judgment-free zones where doubt isn't automatically seen as a threat to be shut down or weakness to be fixed.
But as something else.
As maybe a bridge to be crossed, a necessary, even valuable part of authentic belief formation, or even the path towards an authentic absence of belief, if that's where the honest journey leads, all without the constant threat of total social annihilation.
That leads perfectly into our final thought for you to mull over. If true humility, as some suggest, involves the courage to explore what we don't know without needing rigid, prepackaged conclusions, how does a systemic demand for silence affect a person's ability to genuinely engage with the complexities of life and thrive, honestly, in the modern world?
A tough question to end on.
Indeed. Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.